My name is Vasant Nath. I'm a writer and director. I've lived in Mumbai for the last 10 years. And I'm going to talk to you a little about personal voice. Personal voice being something that I draw on a lot for my work. It's something that has been a big exploration for me in trying to find out a good source material that generates the sort of work that even I want to, at the end of the day, read, because I know that if it generates some kind of interest in me, it's going to generate interest in my future audience, whether they read it or they watch it. The point at which I started realizing the significance of personal voice was around the time that I made my first short film, a film called Shanu Taxi in 2006. I had once driven to the airport in a taxi where a taxi driver had been asking me a lot of personal questions. I had answered him to a certain extent, and then I felt a little awkward that he was asking me all these questions. And after a point of time, I completely shut him out, and I proceeded not to talk to him for the rest of the journey. And when he dropped me off at the airport, and when I was paying him, he grabbed my hand and he asked me that when you come back from wherever you're going, please give me a call, because आपके बगैर मैं उठ नहीं सकता, आपके बगैर मेरी कोई तरक्की नहीं होगी. Please give me a call. You must give me a call. I found it very awkward. I pulled my hand away. I went in and I took my flight. But I kept thinking about this incident for the next many months. And then when I came back, I actually wrote down a story, and then I got some friends together and I made a short film, which was also called Shanu Taxi, and Shanu was the name of that taxi driver. This film became a very successful short film on the International Film Festival circuit. And every time I screened it abroad and other audiences watched it, I remember that they also displayed that they were moved by similar emotions as I had been moved by when this sincere young man had grabbed my hand and told me not to abandon him in a very honest way. I guess at the end of the day, we as artists have to deal with things that bother us, that move us, that cause some kind of an emotional response in us, if we are to expect our audiences to have that similar kind of emotional response in them. One cannot expect anybody to have a significant response to your work if you yourself don't have it, which is why I feel that listening very carefully to the voices inside you is very important. I feel that if you have really observed the world around you with care and gone deeply into it, have itemized it for detail, you have at your disposal the knowledge of a microcosm that reflects the entire universe around you. And I have then worked with this insight in a way which I feel has held me in good stead over the different projects that I've done over the years. I was once commissioned to write a film on wrestlers, and for that there's a lot of sociological and academic material that was available, but that itself wasn't really enough to come up with a screenplay that was vivid enough to inspire an actor or a director to come and then do a good job on it. I then proceeded to take a long trip into Punjab. I spent time in these wrestlers' akhadas. I spoke to a lot of wrestlers. I watched them do their dao page. I learned the vocabulary. I just spent a lot of time, and I took a lot of photographs. And what I found was that when I came back from this trip, and in the months where I had done my research thereafter, and when I spent time with these photographs, it was the vivid images that I had collected during this trip, the lived experience of the wrestlers, that actually worked its way back into my writing and made it vivid. It was the information only through my personal filter became meaningful to me, and thus became of a form that would become meaningful and inspiring to someone else. I really feel that we have the capacity to ultimately give the spin of our personal opinion on something that we observe, in reinterpreting it, in expressing it again. Once we absorb that material, it is in its going through us that it actually acquires a quality that makes it more than just an objective piece of information, but makes it a subjective insight. And I have, as a result, become a very meticulous and avid photographer. Whenever I go out researching anything, I take a lot of photographs. And more than the aesthetic reason, I feel that if my eye is looking at something and it's affecting me, then I must in some way support my memory in cataloging it in a way that brings back those very emotions that were created when I saw those things, because ultimately that is the currency that I'm going to be dealing with in creating work of any sort of significance thereafter. There are so many sources. I mean, once you start believing and committing to the fact that the world around you is in fact can be used as a primary source of material for your original output, then it just becomes a world of abundance around you. Because the moment you start looking at your own friends, your own family a little deeper, you find that you don't just have your own universe, you have, dozens of universes and lived lives around you that you have access to. And I feel that writers don't necessarily take advantage of this. I don't feel that, especially in this city where so much output is created, people shy away from taking advantage of this because they somehow think that what is accessible to them is somewhat not interesting. Whereas I will defer to say that what you have access to is actually the most interesting thing, because you can actually penetrate it. You can step behind a facade. You can ask your friends questions that you can't ask a stranger. Your friends are comfortable enough, your family is comfortable enough to actually reveal to you things which they might not be able to reveal to other people. The moment they see their own lives reflected in the lives of others, they become interested, because it just gives them a little bit of safe distance, and they are seeing themselves through their own eyes, having their own cares, their own worries, their own struggles enacted by someone else. When you start broadening your horizons through reading, through physical travel, through partaking more of culture and art, you begin to see your own experiences and insight reflected and enhanced by the things that you read, see, and experience. All the autobiographies that I have read are important to me because of this, because somewhere in them I have either already seen part of my own life or part of lives that I have known confirmed, insights confirmed, or I have absorbed something that at a later stage becomes important to me, or becomes an insight to me at a later stage as I grow into a person who can receive that knowledge. I feel that one can even step beyond what can be accessed consciously and delve into another place for accessing one's personal voice by going a little deeper into one's subconscious. And there are methods to do this. I feel that paying a little closer attention to one's dreams is a good way of getting clues about the inner workings of your mind. There are images that your mind literally presents to you, which usually we all ignore as nonsense. But however, if we just treat them as more than nonsense, if we treat them as clues to things which are not immediately decipherable, I feel that there's a lot to be taken. I'm not saying that there's a one-to-one correspondence in my dreams and that it works, that my dreams work their way into my work, but my dreams have often told me about the state of certain feelings and how it exists, how they exist in my mind. And I've just taken note of them as I go into my work with my conscious mind, because I become aware of things that are guiding my opinions. I mean, it's you train your ear to listen to subtle clues that your mind gives you. One can use methods to step out of conscious thought and generate material. I mean, I try and sit with a blank page and a pen early in the morning before any conscious thought process starts, when I'm still in a dreamy state, and just start writing. I mean, especially when something's really bothering me, I try and do it. And often it's the genesis of insight that leads to good ideas, which I incorporate into my work. Some of the things that have stayed with me over the years have been writers and filmmakers who have confirmed this for me. One of the people is the filmmaker who made this film called Donnie Darko. I remember watching Donnie Darko as a college student, and I allowed myself to really stay with that film for a long time, because I wanted to get to the bottom of how this filmmaker had made it. And then I bought a book of interviews by the filmmaker, where he said that basically what I did was that I wrote about what I knew, and the only thing that I really knew about was affluent suburban America. And I just looked at my own neighborhood really carefully, and from that I drew a story about time travel, about a young boy who sees scary dark bunny rabbits, and that inspire him to do acts of arson. I said, wow, if that is possible for this guy to come up with a story like Donnie Darko by merely looking at his neighborhood, what am I waiting for? I already have my material. I just have to look carefully at it. We live in a noisy world, and we live in a world where we are really walking down set paths, and we often ignore things which are a little out of the ordinary, even when they are generating feelings in us which we haven't felt before. I feel that if we were to attune ourselves a bit more to those, we will actually be in scenarios where we find the opportunity to come closer to ourselves and thus express work which is much closer to ourselves as well, if we just sensitize ourselves this way. I can give you a couple of examples. I remember when the Mumbai attacks took place, it was one of the first times that I actually felt a sense of nation for the first time. I felt that we as a people were under attack, we as a city were under attack, and I needed to express these feelings in some way. So I called a couple of friends, and we just took our cameras and we went to the site, and a very interesting thing happened that had never happened to me. I found myself talking to people I would not talk to otherwise. And I took a lot of photographs, and those photographs, when I see them today, they bring back that same feeling. If I was to ever write about patriotism, this is the first thing I would go back to, because it's the only time, not the only time, but one of the very few times in my life where I have actually felt it. I don't feel it when I'm asked to stand up and say the national anthem, but this is where I felt it. So I hang on to the real feeling. Expression ultimately has to have things to feed off. So the more we broaden ourselves with experience, with reading, the closer attention that we pay to how we perceive the world as a result of how we have crafted ourselves to seeing it, how our conscious mind is directed towards certain things, how we consciously find ourselves pulling ourselves away from seeing certain things. I think becoming aware of all these things leads to a strong sense of what is important and what is not important to you. And then you choose to channel those things that are important to you into your work. And I think that in the end, it results to work which is a lot more confident. It has conviction behind it, and I feel that that contributes to every aspect of it having a much more solid foundation, making it more memorable, making it more accessible by people. And I think it doesn't apply to just writing, it can apply to many sorts of work in your daily life as well.